Hi everyone, welcome. I'm down here in my wormery, and the bin that you see here up on the bench is a tub full of the castings left behind by some European nightcrawlers. Those nightcrawlers had been occupying this material and pretty much broke it down to the point where I was ready to say, let's get those little guys busy somewhere else. So I had built a really tempting feeding area for them, all kinds of delicious foods and moisture, and then I hauled those worms out of here, and that was 2 weeks ago. 14 days now that this batch of finished castings has been depopulated of all worms, and to say that it's completely depopulated might be incorrect. If we go picking through there, we might find a worm or two. Chances are if we tried really hard we probably would, because it wasn't meant to be like 100% sort of a deal. If a few worms remained in this, it didn't matter, because the idea was that eventually this thing was going to be loaded with worms again anyway, because the objective of this system is to allow all of the cocoons that were left behind by the European nightcrawlers that used to reside in here, give all those cocoons a chance to hatch, and then we would try to round up all those baby worms at the end and reintroduce them back into our colony. You know, we could always simply take these castings, cocoons and all, take them out into the garden, and the plants would be very thankful for some really nice castings. But the cocoons would also go along for the ride, and you'd be missing that opportunity to kind of hang on to that little bit extra boost to your population. So I've been taking the time most recently in all my systems to actually run these cocoon nurseries, just to let the time that's needed pass by so the cocoons can hatch, get rounded up, and then the batch of castings is treated as a truly done batch. Stuff is in really nice shape, but I've been going through all of my systems like this and adding water, since it's important to the hatching of the cocoons that everything that surrounds them is nice and moist. I've been going through all my cocoon bins, spraying them down. This one here doesn't seem like it really needs it, but then again, I don't want to talk myself out of doing what's needed. And even though I might feel like it's in good shape, it'll definitely benefit from getting some moisture. There's not a lot of stuff to see here. All I generally do with this section of the video is just run it back in fast motion to save you the agony of watching me empty a bottle one squirt at a time into a worm bin. So let's make that happen now. Well, we didn't empty it entirely, but we almost did. And it's pretty cool because I keep seeing cocoons everywhere. They're just all over the place. And they're almost all really dark in color. Feels just a little awkward with gloves. But I just saw those couple right there, but they seem to glisten, you know, they're like a little black pearl almost. One little glossy subject amidst a whole bunch of other stuff around it that's kind of matte and doesn't gloss the way the actual cocoons themselves do. So I guess that's the shininess of them that makes them stand out. So my hope is that getting them wet is going to make them hatch. So let's keep our fingers crossed. That is the one thing that I've heard repeatedly in all the people's comments. Get them wet and then sit back and watch them hatch, because it's really all it seems to take. And it does seem like I've been a little bit stingy on the moisture. You know, I came in here, stuff felt nice, seemed like I probably didn't have to do anything, but it did seem right out at the end. It did seem like it was the right thing to do to more or less empty that bottle of water into here. It almost seems like I could have just kept going and added even more, but for now, I think we're in pretty good shape here. Let's get this thing covered up. We can move over to the bin where the worms actually reside. The worms that left all these beautiful castings behind for us. The parents to all the future babies that are going to be in this bin once these cocoons all start hatching. Oh, I can hardly wait. Should be fun to watch. Hopefully it starts happening soon. I just got to keep an eye on the moisture, I guess, and keep the dampness high. All right, let's go get the bin with the adult worms in it. Okay, now before I talk myself into a hole here, let me just take a quick peek, make sure we're dealing with the right bin here. Yes, we are. I can see it already. Oop. Feeding zone indicator is right there in the corner. Let's get these coverings off. For some reason I thought I was in this bin earlier when I was feeding another bin in another video. And I thought I was preparing to do pocket feeding number 2 in that other system, and it turned out that that other system was not this system. So pocket feeding really means just feeding in a different corner every time, and last time was the first round of it. Over in that corner we marked it with the coffee filter, and I don't remember what the feeding consisted of entirely. I know that there was some mashed potatoes placed into the feeding zone all the way at the very bottom. That was the one thing that was dropped in at the very beginning, all the way at the very bottom. Other things laid on top, I don't know, probably some of the routine things like coffee and kitchen scraps, veggies, who knows. But the nice thing about doing these pocket feedings is that we're going to go in a clockwise rotation and feed here today, and then the next time we feed we'll go into this corner, and so on and so forth. It'll always afford us the opportunity to go back today, for example, 1 week in time to see how was that feeding from 1 week ago progressing. And now if we come back in here another week later, then at that point this will be the one that's now progressed 1 week, and we could check out its progress to see how it's coming along, and even check over there to see how 2 weeks worth of progress looks in a typical worm feeding of this type. So since this is where the food was, it's not a surprise that this is where the worms are. I am most curious about the mashed potatoes. See, I think that's what we're encountering down here already. You can see little bits of white mashed potato here and there throughout this corner, and it was stuff that I bought home from a from like a community luncheon, a little bit of a takeout package. Ate the majority of it. Ate all the meat that came with it, all the Wiener Schnitzel and whatever. Even ate some of the potato, but not all of it. So that's why I figured some of it would end up over here in the worm bin. But the reason I suspect that the mashed potato might be going a little bit slow is that they probably seasoned it a little bit, maybe even threw a little butter in there. So I can see the worms maybe not taking an immediate shine to that sort of stuff, but I bet in time we'll check back in there and that mashed potato will be toast. But for now it looks like we've still got some leftovers of that mashed potato over there. I think what we'll do next is just go ahead and check this corner over here, which is where we're going to apply the feeding today. Use it as a chance to till up this corner and see how things look. There is just worms all over the place. Look at that. If I could lift up the corner closer to the camera to see what's going on here. There's a whole bunch of little wormies hanging out down here in this corner. The material throughout this bin has got nice moisture level to it, that's for sure. Very, very nice. So I'm opening up a good sized hole here to drop today's feeding in, because the feeding is pretty good sized. And if you were watching one of my earlier videos, specifically the one when I thought I was in here but I wasn't, I was in a different bin, I had this special food item planned for today's feeding, for this pocket feeding, and it was this big huge chunk of pumpkin that still has the stem of the pumpkin stuck to it. And at this point the stem of the pumpkin also has the coffee filter stuck to it because the dampness of the coffee filter evidently froze to the frozen pumpkin. But that's a pretty nice size, hefty chunk of chow there for the wormies, and I figured once they strip all the orange stuff clean and they leave only the stem, I can extract the stem, but for now we'll just plop it right in there as part of today's pocket feeding. I got a feeling we're going to kind of end up with a mound over here because this is going to be a pretty generous feeding. You know, a lot of this stuff is frozen. I kind of almost feel bad for the little wormies right down in here. But I did almost empty the entire corner. There's only a little bit of material left down there, so whatever worms were left are few. I think I only saw one, and he was already almost back into the rest of the bed, so I don't think we have too much to worry about there. I just figured let's go ahead and start piling this stuff in so we can really see what we're in store for here in terms of how much material we're going to need to cover up at the end. We've got a pretty good bit here. Let's it's frozen. Let's take this piece of paper here, this coffee filter, and fragment it a little bit, help it break up and break down. I think just by being submerged down below the surface, mixed in with the foods that they're getting, it should do okay. Oh, I'm doing my best to keep my grit container clean, but even the fingers on my clean hand are dirty. So let's just be careful here when we apply my crushed eggshells to the feeding here today. Just kind of going in right on top of the foods. And here we got an adventurous little worm making his way over to the feeding area, but you know, buddy, you might want to wait a little while. Wait until that stuff thaws and then you can eat it. Right now it might be a little bit too chilly to be comfortable. I don't think he's going to want to really be over there riding around right on top of the frozen foods. Give it a couple hours, stuff will all be thawed out and it'll be fair game for being devoured. That's what it's there for, so have at it, boys. I'm just curious, as long as we're kind of looking around, look at the size of that guy. Nice big European nightcrawler. Kind of stretched out, almost like he's showing off how big he is. I'm just curious to see how things on this side of the bin look. I mean, since feeding was over there, it wouldn't be too surprising to find only a few worms cruising around out here. Yeah, I could see a worm heading over to the feeding area, having his fill, and then just going wandering around a little bit. So that might explain why we got a bunch of worms out here too. Even over here, a whole bunch of them actually. All over the place, just hanging out down within the bedding. No feedings around here at all. There were no bits of food or anything added to the bin when it was built originally. The first feeding was the feeding that it received last week in that corner there. So the bin was built with all the things that a typical worm bin is built with, usually cardboard, paper, bits of leaves, and whatever, any other sort of carbon-rich bedding type materials that I can come up with. And even some sticks, I guess, sneak in with the leaves sometimes. I don't think something like this is really going to go anywhere in a worm bin, but you could always leave it be and see what becomes of it. But I don't think there's a whole lot left to do here. We've gotten rid of the food, we gave them grit, we took care of their castings and their cocoons, the moisture that we think will help them hatch soon, hopefully. So I think all we've really got left to do here is return things the way we found them and let them continue. These little guys are definitely doing a really nice job. Like I said, this system's only been out here for 14 days. We checked in after the first week, after 7 days, to give it that first pocket feeding. Now after another 7 days, it's received its second pocket feeding. And, you know, at this rate, you can go quite a while before you would return to the initial corner that you started out at, by which time it might actually already be devoid of any leftover foods that were placed in there all those weeks ago. Or there might still be leftovers, but probably not many. So it's always interesting checking in on these bins where the pocket feedings are going around and around. So I look forward to checking in here again, perhaps in another week or so. But that's it for the video. Hopefully you enjoyed it. If you did, as always, please remember to leave me a thumbs up. That's always really appreciated. And if you haven't done so already, please also consider subscribing to the channel too. That's really appreciated as well. All right, everyone. Thanks for watching. Have a great day.